Imagine you're applying for a job, and it's not just any job, it's a big, important executive position with a very large company where your decisions and your leadership can and will affect the lives of not just hundreds, but thousands of employees. Now, imagine you say to this potential employer, I want the job, I've earned the job, but I'm not going to show you my resume. I won't be taking any interviews, and I won't be explaining to you why I'm a good fit for the position. Well, chances are you're not going to get very far with that strategy. So, can somebody please explain to me, and I would prefer to hear from a person or people on the left politically, why is it that the Democratic candidate for President of the United States is now over a month into her campaign? Not one interview, not one address to the nation. I want to say not one policy listed, except that, she kind of screwed the pooch when she let out her whole corporate price fixing position, which is, in a nutshell, it's Marxist and it doesn't work. And that blew up in her face real quick. Now, can someone also explain to me why, when she finally does agree to an interview, how magnanimous of her, that she can't, this powerful woman, this independent woman, this strong woman, this brilliant, qualified woman, has to bring her vice presidential running mate to the interview. Doesn't seem very strong or independent to me. And not only that, but the interview is going to be pre-recorded so that any flubs and word salad, as she's known for spouting, can be, carefully edited out to make her look just absolutely glowing. And I don't even think I would call this an interview. She's going over to her best friend's house, Dana Bash from CNN, who is not going to hit her with any hard-hitting policy questions. She's not going to hit her on any of her shifts, like how she was going to shut down fracking, was anti-fracking. Now she's turned on that policy. She was single-payer healthcare. Now she's turned against that policy. She was for decriminalizing illegal immigration. And now she's turned away from that policy. We are just weeks away from the presidential election, and we still don't know where one of the major party candidates stands. Still doesn't have a platform listed on her website. But anyway, what kind of a world is it we live in where her finally agreeing to this sham of an interview is like headline news? Like, oh my Lord, she's finally going to give an interview. It's not even a real one. Anyway, check this out.
Vice President Kamala Harris will give her first interview Thursday. It's been a point of contention that she's not given any interviews since she became the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. There's been a lot of navel-gazing from me.
And I must say, there is no election prior to this where this would have flown. This is just, we are living in woo-woo times, y'all.
Media as to who would score the first interview with Kamala. The winner is CNN's Dana Bash. Harris will not fly solo, however. Her running mate, Tim Walz, will be part of that interview.
Her running mate, who I forgot to mention earlier, she couldn't even be arsed to be in the building when he was giving his acceptance speech at the DNC. Couldn't even be there to support her guy. But her guy has to hold her hand in this softball, pre-recorded, totally set up, processed food interview.
Which prompted Fox News' Laura Ingraham to post on X, quote, pre-taped, live is just too risky, joint interview, they're afraid of sending her out solo. CNN's Dana Bash will be doing the questioning, this keeps getting worse. And Fox News anchor Howard Kurtz posted, quote, This puts so much pressure on this one sit-down, handing the Republicans a prime talking point, and doing more interviews would make each one less of a major dramatic event. It's a good point. CNN GOP pundit Scott Jennings posted, quote, weak sauce for Kamala Harris to demand an emotional support animal, I guess that's Tim Walz, for her first interview, shows an extreme lack of confidence for Thursday night event on CNN.
And of course, you know why she has to have him holding her hand, because this is a woman. You know, I honestly don't doubt for one moment that she's a very smart woman. I don't think you get to be vice president of the United States if you're an idiot. Of course, she, had some help along the way and certainly climbed that ladder on her knees. But
the sit-down comes over a month since she's entered the race. According to a report in Politico, reporter Eugene Daniels writes that prior to deciding, Harris's campaign had been shopping around for who would be doing the big interview.
Who would be doing? I'm not normally given to ad hominem attacks. But if Kamala was sitting in front of me right now, I'd be like, bitch, you should be doing every interview comes along. Your opposition out there, Trump, he's out there doing podcast interviews. He's doing network interviews. He's doing town halls. He addresses the nation. He's active on social media. Like, he's keeping that line of communication going. And not only that, you know where he stands because he has outlined his platform, which granted hasn't changed a lot from the first time around, but I have no problem with that because it was a pretty great platform. This is the most cult of personality presidential campaign I have ever seen. Probably in the history of the United States, there has been nothing to equal this level of insanity.
Per his report, campaign staff asked reporters input too. Intelligencers Jonathan Chait does not believe one interview will be enough to wipe away the narrative that she's afraid of the big bad mainstream media.
She is.
In his latest piece for New York Magazine, he writes that instead of avoiding interviews...
You know what? I don't think she's afraid of the media. I think she's afraid of herself. Furthermore, I think her party is terrified to have this woman speak off script because we've seen time and time again she can't do it. The reason why word salad has entered our popular lexicon now is thanks in large part to Kamala Harris. Once that mouth gets going, blip, 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 there's no telling what kind of bullshit's going to fall out. And the party right now knows that, and they know that her speaking off script is a huge liability. That is why she is being so contained, so manipulated, and so managed right now.
She should just do as many as possible. He writes,
yes.
Quote, getting Harris out into the news several times a week is actually a much safer strategy. If she gives a bad answer, there will be a news cycle about it, but she will be back in the news a day or two later talking about something else. I just think that the right in America would be saying if Kamala Harris wasn't spending her time campaigning in swing states, why is she so obsessed with the mainstream media who loves her so much? It's so much easier than if she was out talking to regular people. They would spin whatever decision she made into a bad one with a different narrative. And I think they want as many interviews as possible because they want the viewership that is the same excitement that draws huge crowds for her. So I just find all this...
Huge crowds. Can we just whittle back in time a little bit to a recent campaign stop where she didn't even draw like 100 people, and most of them were folks that are already either up her ass or members of the media? But I digress.
It's terribly silly. I think it's just people in media who think this is a big deal. When I talk to my family...
No, it's the American people who think it's a big deal. She wants to be our She wants to be our leader. She wants to set legislation that's going to affect our lives. It's more than just the media. I just bought Olivia Wilde off a Temu looking crackhead. Oh.
Who lives in a swing state. When I talk to my friends who are regular working class voters, they could not care less whether or not she sits down with a mainstream media figure or with who.
I don't know, Jessica. I think this is kind of an exceptional situation because she did not actually have to run or campaign for the nomination. There were no debates. There was no primary process involved.
Nope, no democracy. The party of democracy is offering no democratic process to the people she's going to lead. You would have to be absolutely, abjectly out of your damn mind to vote for this woman.
Involving her, she was simply chosen to be the replacement candidate by Democratic elites and donors. And thus, I think, uniquely in this case, the American people might not feel like they actually know her, what her policies are. She is backtracked on a lot of them. She's flip-flopped on the border wall, some of her progressive environmental stances, whether she thinks there should be an electric vehicle.
See, she's trying to pull the whole Clinton strategy. Clinton was quite a bit left. He moved to the center during the elections. Then after being elected, moves back to the left. That's what Kamala's trying to do, but the problem is she doesn't have the likability of Clinton, arguably isn't as intelligent as Clinton, and people just don't like her.
Vehicle mandate. That was something that our co-host Amber, I saw reported yesterday that she had originally supported a mandate that we all have to have electric vehicles by, I think, like 2040, and now she's just walked that back. She's changing her policies ostensibly, but she's not explaining it. She's not having to rationalize it because she's not ever in a position to get even polite scrutiny from a mainstream media that will no doubt be polite in their discussions with her because they like and support her and want her to win. Dana Bash did a good job in the Biden Trump debate, so fair enough. I think she'll be not insanely hostile by any stretch of the imagination to Kamala, but she might, ask her some.
By not insanely hostile, it means she's going to be putting on her thickest layer of chapstick, getting her lips ready to kiss Kamala's ass.
Probing questions that force Kamala to think on her feet, and that is what Harris has struggled with in the past.
Kamala definitely thinks, but not on her feet.
Ending up saying those kind of vague platitudes. She'll have Tim Walz next to her to be able to step in, give some of that fiery combativeness he's known for. I do think she should do a lot more interviews, and there would be less writing on each one if she was talking to the press a lot. No, it should not take the place of campaigning in the swing states. Obviously, that's more important. But this is a situation where we did not have the opportunity to have the usual scrutiny you have for the candidate, for the person who becomes the nominee for president, because the process was done entirely on the fly this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see it as big of a deal. I see her answering questions.
I just don't see it as that big of a deal because I'm a lefty. And everything the Democrats do is just magical and perfect and wonderful and rainbows. Is this what passes for journalism?
Questions outside of her rallies. I think that they could have press outside of the rallies asking whatever tough questions they have for her.
Outside of the rallies where she can just keep on walking by or slip out around the back and not have to answer.
I just think doing a sit-down interview and the amount of attention this has had is...
It's had a whole bunch of tension because she hasn't done one since she became the candidate. You twit.
Unparalleled in media. What other president has received this amount of scrutiny demanding him?
None, because they've taken interviews and they've given town hall meetings and they've answered questions.
Long sit-down interview. I just think
a major presidential candidate being hidden by its own party is absolutely unprecedented.
It's very silly. Ridiculous
but
and
ridiculous. This is an exceptional circumstance,
like
Jessica. It is unusual.
People and the elites in Washington care about, but I don't think it's something that regular voters care about.
Because you spend so much time out among regular people, I'm sure.
I mean, they're hearing her message. They're hearing her policy.
No, they're not. She's not offering any. She's offering joy and vote for me because democracy and Orange Man bad and yay abortions. That's literally all that she's gotten.
And it just feels out of touch that this has become as big of a deal.
Out of touch. Pot, may I introduce you to Kettle?
As it is, especially when you have so many interviews happening with her on the tarmac.
Where? Oh, on the tarmac. Those aren't interviews, those are people shouting questions, hoping to get an answer.
Outside of her rallies that get next to no coverage. Why? Because they're inconvenient for this narrative that she never talks to the media, which they're pushing as a ploy to get her to come on their show more often because they want the views. They want to make money during an election cycle. And it's just not as necessary as they're making it out to be. But here we go. She's sitting down with Dana Bash, who did a great job during the debate between Trump and Biden most recently. I think she's a...
You know, I am no fan of Dana Bash. I'm certainly not a fan of CNN, but I actually was legitimately and pleasantly surprised by how reasonably professional that entire debate was, how well it was conducted, and that they actually gave both candidates the same amount of time to answer their questions without interrupting. I was pleasantly surprised. That did not go the way I thought it would.
Fine pick for the job for that reason. I don't think is a big deal. People need to get to know Walz too. He's done a lot of sit-down interviews at times when she's been busy, because let's also remember she's serving as vice president. So the two of them showing up together is so they can get to know the ticket. This idea that it's emotional support is...
She's serving as vice president? Serving who? Certainly not us. I can't think of a damn thing she's done, as a matter of fact.
Silly.
If she's too busy because she's doing the work of being vice president, that's fine. That's interesting. I would like to know what that work entails. I think it's thus fair to consider her part of the Biden-Harris administration. I know you got on me for that the other day. I had to laugh, by the way, at this Politico headline from yesterday that was, Vance tries to tether Harris to Biden during Michigan rally. Tries to tether Harris to Biden. She works for him. She's in the administration with him. If she doesn't co-sign the policies of the last 4 years, then she should explain where she differs. But she is part of the team who's responsible for implementing these policies. She was tangentially in charge of aspects.
I don't know who this interviewer is, but bravo. He is getting in her twiggy little ass.
Put philosophically in charge of aspects of the border policy, which is the single most unpopular aspect of the entire administration. That was her purview. So it's just, I feel like I'm being gaslit by a media trying to pretend, oh, she has nothing to, she's the change candidate. She has nothing to do with the administration. She's part of it. She's part of the administration. And some of these questions could be ironed out if she faced hostile scrutiny from the...
But she does not have the intestinal fortitude or the composition to endure any sort of legitimate criticism. This lady cannot answer questions in a coherent manner.
Media. So no, I don't agree. I think this is an exceptional situation where she has been suddenly thrust into the position of being the presidential candidate without any of the normal...
I think we can all agree that Kamala has been thrust into all kinds of positions over the course of her career.
Scrutiny you get by doing this process, and she should do more interviews, not just what she should do with CNN, Fox, and MSNBC, and Rising, by the way, make a little pitch for our show, or News Nation, The Hill, etc. She should make herself available. Yes, they want to make money and they want their ratings, and that's their motivation, fine. But this is a situation where this is an unprecedented situation, and I think it is totally fine. To the extent the media is even criticizing her for not talking to them, there's not that much of that going on. Mostly, they're just giving her favorable coverage. They're making or pretending that she has nothing to do with the Biden administration, even though, again, she's part of it.
This skinny little woman here, she has to know she's full of shit. Like, she has to know. Like, there's no way that any thinking, rational human being can believe the bullshit that she's spouting. I'm just saying.
I think that's led her to conclude, well, why would I bother talking to them? They're so in my corner. They're going to boost me without me even having to work for it. I think that's been the strategy thus far, although that is going to change if she totally ices them out.
I think J.D. Vance's predecessor would have a lot to say about the relationship between a vice president and a president, because Mike Pence and Donald Trump have everything in common, right? especially the major stuff, especially the stuff about elections, considering he was his running mate. I think the Republicans know more than anybody in American politics that there is a difference between a vice president and a president. They can view the country differently. They can even view the Constitution very differently, and elections where their name is on the ticket very differently. So, yes, they're trying to make Harris own every single one of Biden's decisions. When, let's be honest, every single one of the president's decisions are not ones that the vice president endorses.
More Rising right after this.
Sweet baby Jesus. Y'all. Yeah, I'm going to cut it short there, because if I don't, I'm going to start saying some really obscene things that will probably get this channel canceled in its infancy. I don't even have a single sub yet. Hey, while I'm on that, why don't you be that subscriber? Why don't you be number one? Why don't you get in on the ground floor for this used 2012 Toyota Corolla with 200,000 miles on it? And let's see how far we go.